Carol Dweck is a leading researcher in the field of innovation and is the Lewis and Virginia Eaton Professor of Psychology at Stanford. She has also held professorships at Columbia and Harvard universities and has lectured to education, business, and sports groups all over the world. She's elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the National Academy of Sciences. She recently won the Distinguished Scientific Contribution Award from the American Psychological Association, one of the highest awards in psychology. Her research focuses on why students succeed and how to foster their success. We've talked a lot about personal activity. We've talked about health and wellness. We've talked a little bit about education in the context of workforce education. But more specifically, Carol's work has demonstrated the role of mindsets in success and has shown how praise for intelligence can actually undermine students' motivation in learning. These are really important insights for the people who are designing the human experience that goes along with the devices of tomorrow. Her best-selling book, Mindset, has been widely acclaimed and has been translated into over 20 languages. So I'm very happy to welcome to the podium Carol Dweck.
I'd like to start with a warning. My talk is not nearly as cool as the title that was bestowed upon it by the organizers, but I will begin to address questions like, who's going to build this internet? Who's going to create it? Who's going to engage in it fully? And how can it be used to maximize people's potential? And I have some answers to the questions that were asked a moment ago. How should we give feedback? So stay tuned. In my favorite quote, Benjamin Barber, an eminent political scientist, says, "I don't divide the world into the weak and the strong, or the successes and the failures. I divide the world into the learners and the non-learners." I'm going to tell you it's the learners who are going to create, use, and be empowered. You never see, so why would anyone become a non-learner? We're born with such an irrepressible desire to learn. You never see an unmotivated baby. No. You see babies being infinitely curious and addressing the most difficult tasks of a lifetime with tremendous gusto. Yet a lot of the things we do, my research shows, are turning people into non-learners. When we put too much emphasis on being talented, being brilliant, looking smart all the time, we create people who give learning a back seat. So how do we make people remain learners? That's what my work is about. That's what I want to share with you. In my work, we find some people have a fixed mindset about their intelligence or abilities. They think their intelligence is just a fixed trait. You have a certain amount, that's it. These are the people who are vulnerable to becoming non-learners because they're worrying. How much do I have? Will I look smart? Will I look dumb? And learning does not become a priority. The learning zone is not their comfort zone. But others have a growth mindset. They believe their abilities can be developed through hard work, good strategies, mentoring, and instruction from others. They don't think everyone's the same or anyone can be Einstein, but they understand that even Einstein wasn't the guy he became before he put in years and years of dedicated labor. Mindsets matter for learning and productivity. In many, many studies, we've measured students' mindsets by asking them to agree or disagree with questions like this. Your intelligence is something very basic about you that you can't really change, or everyone, no matter who they are, can become substantially smarter. And when we track those kids, even though these kids making a difficult transition, school transition, entered with the same past achievement test scores, their math grades jumped apart and diverged continued to diverge over the next 2 years. We've seen this over and over. In the face of challenge and difficulty, people with a growth mindset do better. So how does this happen? How do mindsets affect learning and productivity? They do that by creating a psychological world for people where everything has a different meaning. Let me take you through those worlds in terms of 3 mindset rules. First, in a fixed mindset, the cardinal rule is, because it's fixed, you better look smart at all times and at all costs. And above all, never look dumb. In a growth mindset, because you can develop your abilities, why waste your time showing off when you could become getting smarter? Rule number 2, in a fixed mindset, if you're really smart, things should come naturally. You shouldn't have to sweat, struggle, be confused like less able people. They think things come naturally to people who are true geniuses. But in a growth mindset, working hard is the key to developing your ability. They recognize that geniuses do, in fact, work really hard. And the work of Anders Ericsson tells us that geniuses are often the people who simply worked harder than everyone else, worked harder than their peers who were once equally talented. Those with a fixed mindset subscribe to Homer Simpson's motto, trying is the first step toward failure. And third, in the face of setbacks, in a fixed mindset, that setback relates on your basic ability. It's about you. It means you're not as smart as you thought you were. So in dozens of studies, we've seen they hide their mistakes and deficiencies. But in a growth mindset, that's a natural part of learning. We've seen that people in a growth mindset confront their mistakes and take measures to remedy their deficiencies. Let's see how this works. We took the students who were making this difficult school transition during adolescence. We asked them what they would do after a poor performance on the first test in a new course. And here's what they said. In a fixed mindset, they said, I'd spend less time on this subject from now on. I would try to cheat on the next test. Think about it. If the failure meant they didn't have ability and effort is not seen as attractive or efficacious, cheating becomes a viable option. But students in a growth mindset, I'd work harder from now on. I'd spend more time studying for the tests. They're not coming in with different ability, but they're going to be leaving with different ability. Let's look at how this works in the brain. In this study, Mosier and his colleagues measured the electrical potential as college students worked on a task, made errors, and corrected them, or not. The red-hot brain on the right shows the growth mindset students detecting the error, processing it deeply, and correcting it. The oh-so-cool brain on the left shows the fixed mindset students detecting the error and getting out of town as quickly as possible. So, you can see how these different frameworks would lead to different adoption of challenges, different rates of learning, and different productivity. In a fixed mindset, the rule is always look smart, never look dumb. Don't work too hard. It should at least look like it came naturally, and run from difficulty. In the growth mindset, it's work hard to learn from mistakes. You can see more productivity coming out of there. And not just in terms of intelligence, creativity itself. In a very interesting study, O'Connor, Namath, and Akutsa at Berkeley looked at the relationship between people's beliefs about creativity. Is it just an inherent trait that you have or don't, or is it something you develop? How it related to people's actual productivity. In their first two studies, they showed that people's mindsets predicted their actual creativity on a task that they gave them to find many novel uses. It predicted lifetime creative achievement. And in a third study, they put people into a fixed or a growth mindset about creativity by giving them quotes from famous people that embodied one mindset or another. And they were the same quotes, but they were doctored to embody a different mindset. For example, one quote started, most artists and supposed creative types just copy someone else. By the way, this quote was in their study attributed to Steve Jobs. Most artists and supposed creative types just copy someone else. They adjust, tweak a little, but overall, it's just the same thing. But it ended differently in the two conditions of the study. Half the people saw this ending, but some people have some inherent quality, fixed mindset, that lets them see the bigger picture and do something truly creative. But some people work to a point that lets them see the bigger picture and do something truly creative. Just by seeing a few quotes that embodied the different mindsets, people performed differently on a subsequent task measuring creativity. Those with the growth mindset created more and more original uses for novel items. It's not just people who can have mindsets. Corporations, organizations can also embody different mindsets. I call that a culture of genius or a culture of development. In a study we completed recently of Fortune 1000 companies, we looked at companies where people predominantly endorsed a fixed mindset about their company. When it comes to being successful, this company believes that people have a certain amount of talent and they can't really do much to change it. And we contrasted them with companies where the majority of people endorsed a more growth mindset about the organization, the idea that the organization believed that people could develop their talent. And what we found was that in the companies that embodied more of a growth mindset, people rated that company as more supportive of creativity and innovation. They said that creativity and innovation were encouraged, and also, that risk-taking was more encouraged. That if you took an appropriate risk, they would support you. Or if you learned from the mistakes you made, they would consider that value added to the company. So the corporate mindsets are also fostering and predicting creativity and innovation. And incidentally, the people in the fixed mindset corporations said that more corner cutting and unethical behavior was going on, because in a culture of genius, everyone wants to be the alpha male or female. And so it may require cutting some corners to get ahead of the next guy. It may require keeping secrets rather than collaborating. How are these mindsets fostered? In a number of ways. We've looked at genius talk, but the overall idea is that when we give people feedback, we are sending a message about whether we value innate talent or whether we are valuing their growth and development. We undertook this line of research at the height of the self-esteem movement, when the gurus were telling everyone to praise everyone else as lavishly and globally as possible. So, you might see parents in airports telling their newborn infants what a genius they were, or you might see people in organizations reluctant to give each other meaningful feedback. So let me tell you about a few of our findings. First, in many, many studies now, we've pitted intelligence praise against process praise. Kids or people work on a task. We ensure that they do pretty well. And then half the people receive some kind of intelligence praise. Either you're really smart, you're talented, you're really good at this. Or process praise. You worked hard, you tried good strategies, or you took on a challenge and stuck to it, you improved. Anything about the process they engage in. And repeatedly, what do I have here? Yes, repeatedly we've found that intelligence or talent praise fosters a fixed mindset. You're telling the person the coin of the realm is being smart. Whereas the process praise fosters more of a growth mindset. But what happens is, as soon as people understand that the coin of the realm is being smart, they become non-learners. After we praise the participants in our study, we offer them a choice of tasks that they can work on next. Something that's in their comfort zone where they'll do well, something you're good at, so you're sure to do well, or something new where they might make mistakes, get confused, but they'll learn something important. The majority of people praised for their intelligence take the task they're sure to do well at. We like to say they don't want to risk their newly minted gifted label. But the great majority of people praised for the process choose the task that they'll learn something from. We also find that after a difficult task, we always give them a difficult task, the people who were praised for their intelligence tend to crumble. They lose their confidence, they lose their enjoyment of the task. And even if we go back to the easier problems, their performance is not as sharp. But those who were praised for the process, their ego isn't on the line. They see the problems are harder, and they work at them. Many of them say the hard ones are their favorite, and their performance on the easier problems has actually skyrocketed because through working on the difficult problems, they've taught themselves new and advanced strategies. I just have a note here just to mention, we've now shown that mothers' praise to their babies 1 to 3 years of age predicts the child's mindset and desire for challenge 5 years later in 2nd grade, and their math performance 2 years after that in 4th grade. So now I feel entitled to intervene with the mother at the airport who's telling her baby he's a genius. So what to praise? Not just effort, struggle. Someone recently said to me, in your culture, struggle is a bad word. I said, you're right. You don't come home at the end of the day say, honey, I had a fabulous struggle. No, you're usually crawling over the threshold looking for some form of libation. But struggle is a great word. I worked with very very, very large Silicon Valley company that had traditionally a culture of genius. And one of the departments asked me to come over and talk to them and work with them because they felt that culture of genius was stifling their creativity. And so one thing they started to do was struggle talk, making struggle normative or even mandated. And so if I say to you, what are you struggling with today? That whole requirement to look like a genius, someone who knows everything, the demand to be a know-it-all falls away as people are talking about what they're struggling with and what they're going to struggle with next. The strategies, the choices people make, the decision-making process they engage in, the choosing of difficult tasks, persisting, capitalizing on mistakes, all in the service of the ultimate values of learning and improving. And now some schools are folding these into their grading system, and some companies are folding these growth mindset qualities into their compensation systems to promote that kind of getting out of your comfort zone, doing new things, sticking to them. Just to give you an example of how the value system needs to be changed. We might have said, before knowing this, we might have thought we were really boosting someone's confidence by saying, wow, you did that so quickly, that's impressive. Why is it impressive? They already knew how to do it. But you did that so quickly and easily. I'm sorry I wasted your time. Let's do something you can learn from. So again, this, instead of extolling the quick, easy, smart behavior, we're conveying our value of learning and improving. So praise comes after the fact. What about before the fact? We recently finished a big study, or my colleagues recently finished a big study at the Khan Academy, where we looked at what kind of encouragement students could receive that would be most motivating to them. So we had over 250,000 participants, which was exciting. And we compared the growth mindset statements. We were working with students who were taking a unit on fractions. And in one control condition, there was no sentence at the beginning of each problem. In the second condition, there were these general exhortations to try hard. And in a growth mindset, effort is valued, but nagging someone to try hard does not do the trick. And in the growth mindset statements, students were told, were given one of 10 or 12 statements before each problem, saying things like, remember, when you work on hard math problems, you grow your math brain. Or remember, working on these problems can make you smarter in math. What happened was that those students solved significantly more problems correct, about 5%, 4.5% on that unit, but they also elected more subsequent units to take, and they did better on those too, even though they were no longer exposed to the growth mindset encouragement. What about corrective feedback? Someone asked about that before. We have a whole program of research now on one word. And we have shown that after a student gets a math problem wrong, if you say not yet, it promotes more of a growth mindset, greater persistence, and ultimately better performance than just telling them they were wrong or even telling them try again. Not yet puts a failure in a growth mindset context. We know you're trying, you may be making progress, but you're not there yet. It's a very powerful word. And in a recent math game, in collaboration with game scientists at the University of Washington, we incorporated a growth mindset incentive system into the math game. And what this did, compared to the usual standard math game, was it rewarded the use. You got brain points. The students got brain points for the use of prolonged effort, for trying new strategies, and for making progress. And they didn't get, if you look on the right, they didn't get any points for zooming through a level. This level didn't give you a chance to struggle and use your brain. What good was it? We didn't say that. Well, we'll give you a harder level next. It's kind of like, oh, sorry. As opposed to the usual game where students rack up the points for zooming through as quickly as possible. What we found was increases in the overall time that kids played the game compared to the standard game, an enhanced strategy use, greater perseverance after challenge, and most exciting we found, and you can't really see this very well, but I'll tell you, in the experimental game, a greater proportion of struggling students stayed in till the end because the game didn't make them feel dumb. Now, so that goes to how do we increase productivity? How do we empower people? This goes to who's going to create that Internet of everything? And some exciting new research is showing that fields like computer science, engineering, physics may be conveying a fixed mindset message to its students, which may be discouraging talented women and minorities from participating. So let's look at that. This graph represents the percentage of female students earning PhDs in the various fields. So in the end, you see engineering, computer science, and physics, where less than 20% of the PhDs are earned by women. Leslie Simpian and Myers took a poll of scholars across the country in these various fields to see whether they thought they personally endorsed a fixed or a growth mindset about success in their field, and also whether they thought their field embodied a fixed or a growth mindset. So when it comes to computer science, let's say, the most important factor or factors for success, and they rated a scale between motivation and sustained ability, sustained effort, raw ability is secondary, versus is a special aptitude that just can't be taught. The more a field endorsed the fixed mindset, the less. And it was a pretty whopping correlation, accounting for a substantial proportion of the variance. The more a field was said to endorse a fixed mindset, the fewer women and the fewer minorities were in that field. When a field holds a fixed mindset, saying some people have it, some people have this special aptitude, some don't, women and minorities know who they think might not have it and are less attracted to those fields. So we need to change the message that we put out in these science and tech fields that make people welcome who may not feel as comfortable in a culture of genius, but might feel very comfortable and have a lot to contribute in a culture of growth and development. In a lot of work now with thousands of students, we have changed mindsets directly by teaching them about the brain, how it grows with hard work, how the brain contains neurons, and that every time they stretch out of their comfort zone to learn new and difficult things, their brains form newer, stronger connections, and over time they can get smarter. In one study with students making a difficult transition to 7th grade, we showed that those who learned the growth mindset showed a sharp increase in their grades, whereas those who did not showed a continued decrease in their grades. And I'll just take you quickly through a few other studies. But first I wanted to say, how does this work? The students who learn the growth mindset tell us, and maybe like the people in the Silicon Valley company, a growth mindset transforms the meaning of struggle and difficulty. In a fixed mindset, people say, that's when you feel dumb. But in a growth mindset, they've learned that's when you're getting smarter. That's when your neurons are making those connections. And in all kinds of activities that are hard, whether it's adherence to a medical regime, whether it's weight loss, the idea of forming those connections when you're working hard, even if you may not see the results right away, can be powerful. I want to show you a quote from a teenage girl that illustrates this. Probability. I was just like, oh, I don't get this at all. But I was just like, okay, I'm going to do this. I want to do this because it's so hard. In a recent study, we showed, no, it's not too late. We took the lowest achievers in 13 high schools across the country, the bottom third, gave them a 2-session growth mindset workshop over the internet, and found that even within 2 months, their grade point average increased over the control group. In a community college, the gateway to higher education, we looked at students who were enrolled in developmental, we used to say remedial math. That's where community college students go to die. Many of them never escape. But learning a growth mindset about math cut their dropout rate from those courses in half. And finally, at a high-quality public institution, learning a growth mindset during orientation increased slightly the probability that all students would carry a full course load through the first year, but increased substantially the probability that minority students would do so. So if we want to get everyone into this internet of the future, we need to address the mindsets they're using when they confront difficult periods of life or difficult tasks. I want to end with this example of a school that was transformed in terms of a growth mindset. This is a school, Stephanie Friedberg is a Native American researcher. She went back to the reservation in the state of Washington where she grew up, and she transformed that school around growth mindset principles. The school was always in the bottom 5% of the state and always at the bottom of the district. She made the growth mindset teaching culturally relevant. When at first she proposed that students could get smarter, it's a kind of a middle-class value. But when she said, you can grow your brain and then contribute to your family and community, they got really excited. The parents were involved. Stephanie made a TV program which became the most watched program in reservation history, growth mindset program. The teachers talk about 6 hours a day to grow your brain. Maybe you need to stay in from recess if you didn't pay attention. Maybe you need to stay after school. And the teachers say, because we care about you, we want you to have 6 hours a day to grow your brain. Students are thanked when they participate in class for helping the class grow their learning. And they're thanked when they express mistakes, confusion, and struggle for helping the teachers grow their teaching brains. What happened? After a year and a half of this program, the kindergartners and first graders went from the bottom of the district to the top. And the district contained affluent sections of Seattle. So these kids were now learners. The 2nd to 5th grade kids who started under the old regime were not at the top of their district, but many of them were making 1.5 to 2 years of progress in 1 year. The school wasn't changed, the teachers weren't changed, but the mindset was changed. So I might mention we have programs of research in other domains showing that a growth mindset about health increases adherence to medical regimes among adolescent diabetics, and it has an impact on cancer patients' well-being. We have a whole line of work on willpower, and we also have a line of work on peer relationships in the schools, all within the mindset framework. So, we started by asking, who's going to create that Internet of Everything? Who's going to participate? Who's going to be empowered by it? And how can it be used to promote greater well-being? So I think we have a little bit of a sense now, but I also think we have a sense of how to invite more people to participate and be empowered. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Please come up to the microphone.
I have a fairly loud voice. What is the best way? What materials do you have? I want to get this to work with my grandson, who's struggling with fractions. Mm-hmm. He's got to build his mindset. ADHD, dyslexia. Mm-hmm. You've got to build that mindset too. That's half the
So how old did you say he was?
He's 12 now.
Okay,
so other materials for him and me. I got to learn too.
Yeah. So there's my book. I hate to promote, but he asked me, what can I do? Mindset. And also on mindsetworks.com, a website, there's a program called Brainology that's aimed at adolescents. Teaches them a growth mindset and how to apply it to their schoolwork. Brainology.
Carol, I want to thank you for accepting the challenge.
It was a challenge.
Of speaking to the Media X group, and I think perhaps going a little outside your comfort zone initially to embrace the Internet of Everything, the Internet of Things.